We're very happy to welcome to the Osaka School of International Public Policy, Professor Ajay Dubey. He has come to us from JNU in New Delhi, India, and he's going to talk to us today about Indian engagement on the African continent. So good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you here. Today we're going to talk about India's engagement in Africa, specifically on the side of peace and security. But before we get to that, I'd just like to ask you a little about the overall engagement in its many facets of India with Africa. Could you just give us an overview?
Yes. India-Africa engagement is historical and it is multidimensional. There is a huge population of India in Africa, and it is Africa which gave India its freedom fighter Mahatma Gandhi. In fact, it converted a professional barrister to a Mahatma in South Africa. He acquired all his tools and techniques of freedom struggles like non-violence, civil disobedience, peaceful protest, all in South Africa. So India-Africa are very well connected, especially the southern part of it. During colonial time, a large number of people moved from India to Africa, and there is 3 million population of Indian diaspora in Africa. And these diaspora is more than 150 years old, and they have come up very well in African society, and they are well connected with India. And therefore there is overall engagement which is historical. India was very closely engaged in freedom struggle of Africa, and Nehru and Gandhi had made it clear that African freedom struggle is continuum of Indian freedom struggle. And if you read their speeches, the position that they took in United Nations, Commonwealth, and subsequently in Bandung or non-aligned summits, it was a very close solidarity with African freedom struggle. Similarly, from 1970 onwards, when we had the South-South cooperations, which had a strong economic dimension, India was the leading country to propose that, and along with Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere, these two countries were working to bring India and Africa for horizontal linkages, and the economic cooperation was going smoothly. And therefore, it's the political, economic and economic cooperation were there. Simultaneously, there was also a security interface which happened.
Historically speaking.
Yes. And even when Africa was not independent, like in Congo crisis, India sent its peacekeepers, and they were the most trusted and reliable professional peacekeeping force. India is the 3rd largest contributor to the peacekeeping in Africa. And in that, it had substantial role over the period of time in maintaining peace and security in different parts, whether the West Africa or Southern Africa, or also in Sudan.
Okay, this sounds like a very good way to bring us to into our section on peace and security in particular, since you've started talking about peacekeeping in the historical sense. But I think when you said they're the 3rd largest, you mean peacekeepers in general, right? In the world. And then in Africa today, there are very large numbers of peacekeepers from India in places like the Democratic Republic of Congo.
In Sudan, in West Africa,
Cote d'Ivoire.
Cote d'Ivoire, and they were very active in Sierra Leone and Liberia earlier also. And they are also participating in this Great War of Congo regions. There are some peacekeepers over there.
And this is sort of now in the Democratic Republic of Congo, this is perhaps less peacekeeping and more peace enforcement in many ways.
I think the same peacekeeping missions have different role into the different region depending on the nature of conflict. And the kind of mandate these peacekeepers are given. So peace enforcement, peacekeeping, peace management, all these differ depending on the nature of conflict.
And this role, I think, is in many ways, it's not so much when you first started talking about the historical side, it was very much in bilateral terms, I guess. But in terms of peacekeeping, we're looking at something that is very multilateral and going through the United Nations rather than a sort of bilateral issue, isn't it?
It's not bilateral. Indian engagement in Africa is always through UN. And there had been demand from African Regional Organization for India to participate directly, but most of its engagement is through United Nations peacekeeping forces. But it has also advocated and works for training and strengthening the capacity of the regional organizations or African countries' peacekeeping mechanism. So it doesn't engage itself in peacekeeping unilaterally, bilaterally.
But there are a number of other security issues in the region, or in terms of this relationship. For example, the piracy, the issue of piracy of the east coast of Africa, namely Somalia, but also in a much broader sense, which India has also been playing a role in combating, I understand.
Yes, I think Indian engagement earlier during Cold War period in Africa was largely to strengthen UN intervention in Africa to stabilize these countries, to ensure peace. But during the globalization phase, India's economic stake is also increasing in Africa substantially. In Sudan, it has more than 3 billion state investment in hydrocarbon sectors. In several other countries, it is buying oil production licenses and different wells into those regions. And therefore, India's economic engagement is increasing, and therefore its security concern is also increasing bilaterally. Most of the trade which passes through Indian Ocean region, especially through Suez Canal and neighboring region, they are affected by piracy. And therefore India is closely involved into that. Also, India considered this region as area of influence of India. It has regional ambitions and it wants to take a leading role in maintaining peace in this part of the ocean. And therefore it has taken active role, and it has refused to take command from the major powers to play subsidiary role into this region. But it does coordinate with them rather than works under their command into this region.
Because the anti-piracy movement is very much a multilateral issue as well. You've got navies from several countries that are involved, and that must be coordinated.
Coordinated, but not subordinated.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. And speaking of the other, as you mentioned, these areas of influence, there's also, I suppose, in terms of Africa, the West Indian Ocean aspect. There are a lot of island states and also coastal areas along the east coast of Africa, which I'm sure are of interest to India as well.
Yeah, India has very close historical relation with Eastern African, Indian coastal regions, Indian Ocean coastal region, and also with Western Indian Ocean, where you have the 5 islands which belongs to Africa, and they're member of SADC. And the entire coastal region on the eastern side, and these islands have a substantial Indian diaspora into that. Mauritius is more than 70% people of Indian origin. Seychelles has 7%. Madagascar, though they are just 15,000 out of 20 million population, but they control more than 50% of the GDP of that country. So in many ways, in South Africa, there are 1.2 million people of Indian origin. And in professional, educational category, they are even more advanced than the white population. So, and these are the regions which are also in the strategic neighborhood of India. India has assumed self-proclaimed responsibility for the regions, and therefore it cannot be a passive player in the regions. In the post-Cold War period, there had been changing security dimension in the region. The traditional forces have become more dormant, like USA and Britain. It's only the France, because of the Réunion, Département de Outre-mer, that it is active. But much more important consideration for India had been the very aggressive role of China in establishing contact and strategic outposts in this region all along. And therefore, when China started doing that, India became very proactive in establishing listening posts in Seychelles, some radar and surveillance station in Madagascar, a very strong presence in Mauritius, and it has started several naval exercises with South Africa, and also air exercises with them. It has also trilateral exercises with IPSA exercise, which happens, and therefore it has made its presence felt that for the security consideration in this region, which is the eastern part of Africa along Indian Ocean and Western Indian Ocean island, India will be watchful and will protect its interest and African interest.
I see. So this is a trend that is likely to continue, and especially I think China is not in the process of scaling back. I think it is going in the opposite direction.
Yes,
so I guess we're likely to see this competition, I guess.
It's a competition, and also the good part is that African countries are more friendly with India.
Why is that so?
Because of various reasons. One is that India was very historically linked with them. It's a democratic country, and they like Indian experiments of diversity management, and a very active policy of dissociating with Indian diaspora is what convinced all these countries that in the post-independence phase, India is not going to use diaspora to the detriment of these native populations. And that's a very unique policy which Nehru started from 47 onward, which was to contrast against the British policy of proactive diaspora policy in Rhodesia or South Africa. And we followed a very active policy of dissociation. We gave all the fellowship, all the engagement with the native populations. So therefore there is a goodwill that exists, and therefore India, because of historical reasons and multidimensional relationship, is very comfortable in this region for security issues as well.
Thank you very much for your time.
Welcome. Thank you.